Right, hey guys, it's Weston here. So today I'm going to be comparing the Huawei P9 and the Xiaomi Mi 5, and we're going to be taking a look at the cameras. Now, if you've seen my first video, I did an in-depth look at both the camera apps. So this time we're going to actually be comparing the cameras to see what the quality is like. So we're actually shooting front facing now with both phones, both handheld, no stabilization from either, so I'm not using any gimbals or anything like that. It's all handheld. So anyway, yeah, what we're going to be doing is taking some photos, taking some videos and seeing how both of these cope. As you can see, it is a gorgeous day today, so we should be getting some pretty good video and photo samples. So anyway, let's take a look at this front facing camera a little bit more and do some stabilization. So you can see I'm just pretty much walking now, so you just get a rough idea of what it's like, just in case you want to use these for vlogging. So anyway, here it is. So what I'm going to do now is carry on with the rest of the test. I hope you all enjoy it. Right guys, so now we're going to do a quick focusing test. So both have got phase detection autofocus. So let's just see which one can do this better. So what I'm going to do is walk towards this tree and see which one can capture focus, and then which one captures focus quickly when we get closer to the tree. So I think both have actually got focus now. I'll have to wait until I get home to see which one's in focus. But now what we're going to do is move to the side and see how it captures focus on that bench over there. And it looked like the Xiaomi was actually quicker that time, so let's go back to the tree. Both were pretty fast, so let's go back here again. And again, the Xiaomi is quicker. Right guys, so now we're going to be comparing the 1080p samples from the rear facing camera. So you can see now we're both shooting in 1080p, both at 30 frames per second. Now, the P9 is not capable of shooting 4K. I don't know why Huawei decided not to do that, but they give us 60 frames per second instead. The Mi 5, on the other hand, you can actually shoot 4K at 30 frames per second. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to show you what the 4K looks like. Now, it will be downscaled to 1080p, but if you do want some raw 4K footage from the Mi 5, then let me know by leaving a comment. So what I'm going to do now is switch the Mi 5 over to 4K just to show you the difference. Right guys, so there you have it. The P9 is still at 1080p and the Xiaomi is now shooting at 4K. And obviously with 4K you get a lot of advantages. You actually get to crop in more and still retain loads of detail. The downside is it does take up more file space and it is harder to edit. So I guess that's your preference if you want to shoot in 4K, but at least you know the Mi 5 actually has that option. Whereas the P9 can only shoot in 60 frames per second, but again, some people might find that more useful than actually shooting at 4K. Right guys, so now we're on the rear facing camera on the P9 and the Mi 5. So we're just going to take a quick walk and see which one is most stable. I mean, looking at it, they both look pretty stable. I would give the edge to the Mi 5 actually, it's looking a bit more stable, but like I said, I won't know until I get home. And obviously I'll write some feedback in the description to see which I thought was best. So let's spin round and walk back this way. As far as colour accuracy goes, let's have a look at these flowers down here. So I would say that the Mi 5 is looking really quite warm and quite vibrant, whereas the P9 is more colour accurate but on the duller side. So I guess that's down to your preference. Let's see how these autofocus. So we'll just find a flower right here, so let's see which one focuses. I think they've both hit focus and I'll see which one got focus first. Right, so that's that. So what I'm going to do now is go and take some more photos and see which one of these produces better photos in auto mode. Right guys, so now I'm going to be looking at some rear samples from both these cameras. So here we've got a 16:9, and I think both look great. They're really sharp, they're really detailed, and both are just great images. I think the P9 wins it though because it's a little bit more colour accurate. Dynamic range on both is fantastic, but the P9 does take it. Looking at this next one, and I think the Mi 5 actually takes this one. It's a little bit more vibrant and less colour accurate, but I think it's more pleasing. It's a little bit more detailed as well. If you especially look around the houses at the front, you can just see a little bit more detail in the rooftops. But again, both are really nice images, but I just prefer the Mi 5. I just think it looks a little bit nicer. Getting onto this one here, and I think the P9 takes this one. It's more colour accurate, and I just think it is a really nice image. If you look to the Mi 5 again, it's a little bit warmer and not as accurate as the P9 is, but it's still an overall nice image. Then we crop in at 100% and you can see that the P9 has nail focus and it is a really sharp image. The Mi5 is a little bit blurry and a little bit softer, but still looks good. Then we get onto this padlock here, and again I think the P9 takes it. It's much more colour accurate and it looks a bit more detailed and much sharper. If you look at the Mi5, again it is warmer, still a nice looking image, don't get me wrong, but I do think the P9 is more accurate and more detailed. And you can actually see that detail more when you crop in 100%, especially look at the text on the padlock. It's much sharper, much crisper. Again, like I said, both are nice images, but the P9 does take the win. Then we're looking at this flower, and again, the Mi5 is a little bit more vibrant and a little bit brighter. But I do think the P9 is slightly nicer. Again, it's more colour accurate, and I just think it looks great. Good bit of background blur with both of these cameras. But I do have to give the colour accuracy and detail level to the P9. It just is sharper and more colour accurate. And you can see this again by cropping in 100%. We've got much more detail in the petals. And again, you can just see that difference in colour. The Mi5's warmer, the P9 is cooler but more accurate. Then we get onto this shot here, and you can see the Mi5 has completely blown out the sky, and it's not done a very good job whatsoever. The grass is a little bit too saturated as well. It didn't look like that when I actually took the photo. If you want to see a more realistic one, then the P9 offers that. The grass is much more accurate, as is the sky as well. You can just see that it's controlled the dynamic range much better and produced a more realistic image. Then we stick the HDR on, and it's sort of the sky out on the Mi5, but it's just messed up everything else. The grass is even more saturated, and there's a lot of over sharpening happening as well. The P9 hasn't seen a big improvement from HDR, but then again, I don't think it really needed it because the image was great to begin with. Looking at these ones here, and apparently flowers of this colour are really hard to capture, and I think both have done fantastic. And it's actually for some reason the P9 that's a little bit warmer on this one, whereas the Mi5 is a little bit cooler. I'm not sure why that is, but it's just what happened. But both look really nice, and I guess the colour's down to your preference. Cropping 100%, and it's the P9 that's much sharper and much more detailed there, but both doing a really good job, I think. But again, I'd say the P9 takes it. Then we look at this statue here, and again I give the edge to the P9, it's just more detailed. You can just see more of the finer stuff on the statue than you can in the Mi5. And looking at the sky as well, it's more colour accurate. Dynamic range is good on both though. Then we get onto this flower, and the P9 looks fantastic. The Mi5 seems to have misfocused a little bit, and it's given a softer looking image, whereas the P9 is really sharp and the colours are really nice and vibrant. And again, we've got good depth of field with both of these images. Cropping 100%, you can just see what I was talking about, how crisp that image looks from the P9. Whereas the Mi5, it's still a decent looking image, but it's just not as sharp. Then we get onto some front facing samples. And I'd actually have to give the edge to the Mi5 on this one. It's more colour accurate, whereas the P9 has given me sort of a yellow skin tone, whereas the Mi5 looks a little bit more natural. Cropping 100%, and in the Mi5 is actually more detailed as well. You can just see around my eyes and my beard, it's just got more detail there. Then we get to this image, and it's actually the P9 that's done better on this one. It's more colour accurate, the sky looks better, it's more well controlled, and the dynamic range is better. It's actually more colour accurate as well. The Mi5 is much warmer. Cropping, and both are fairly detailed, but I'd give the edge to the P9 here. Again, looking at the hairs on my beard, it's just more defined than it is on the Mi5. This one, we've got a bit of light bleeding in both of them. The Mi5 seems to have controlled it a little bit better, but both are nice looking images. Detail again, I would have to give the edge to the P9. But if you look at the background, you can see we get a much nicer shallow depth of field with a Mi5 front facing camera, but the image looks a bit better on the P9. Right guys, so now let's take a look at some indoor samples from both these phones, and this one here I would give the edge to the Mi5. Both of these are taken in exactly the same condition, but I think the Mi5 has produced a nice looking image. It looks much cleaner. Colour accuracy I would give to the P9, though it is closer to what the subject looks like. Even though I do prefer the Mi5, I just think, like I said, it looks cleaner. The P9 seems to be a touch over sharpened. I'm not a huge fan of over sharpening, and I prefer the slightly softer but cleaner looking image from the Mi5. Then we get onto this one here, and again I would give the slight edge to the Mi5, especially if you look around the wheels, you can just see much more details being captured there. The P9 again is more colour accurate, but I just think I prefer the image from the Mi5. It is again much sharper and it's captured focus better, but I just think I prefer the Mi5's image. That's just my opinion. This one, the clear winner is the P9. You can just see how much more detailed it is, and just look at the numbers in comparison to the Mi5. It's much cleaner, it's much easier to read, and I was actually able to get much closer to the subject whilst keeping it in focus. The Mi5 struggles to capture focus even at this distance, and I just think if you're taking photos like this, then the P9 is a massive winner in this one. Then we look at this one of the setup, and it's actually tough to call this one. If you look especially around the headphones, there is a lot of noise on the P9, whereas the Mi5 seems to have controlled that noise a little bit better. So this one I would have to give the edge to the Mi5. Again, P9 is more colour accurate, but I just prefer the image from the Mi5. It just looks much cleaner. Then we got onto this front facing sample, and again I'd have to give the edge to the Mi5. I just prefer how it looks. The skin tones look a bit nicer and a little bit more natural, whereas the P9 again is a touch over sharpened, I think. The colours look nice, but I just prefer the image taken by the Mi5 in this one. So now we get onto this one in artificial light, and again the Mi5's taken it. I think although the image is softer and it's not as sharp, I just think it's a much nicer looking image. It looks much cleaner, there's not as much noise, and I just think it's a nicer image. Look at the P9, it's not a nice image actually, to be honest. But the P9 does have a trick up its sleeve, and that is a flash. So it can utilise the front screen as a flash. So that means it'll fill your subject out much better. I mean, I still prefer the image on the Mi5 actually, but in lower light situations, the P9 would take it because it's got that flash. In this situation though, I think the Mi5 is still my favourite out of the two. Even though the P9 is more detailed, I still prefer the Mi5. So now we get onto this one in artificial light, so you can just see there's a sort of yellow hue to the photo. I would have to give the edge to the P9 in this one. It seems to be much more colour accurate and closer to the subject. The Mi5 again has produced a really nice looking photo, but I think in artificial lighting, the P9 actually takes this one. So now we get onto this one, and this is in pitch black, so no light whatsoever. Just to test the flash. So I think the P9 takes it in colour accuracy again, but I actually prefer the image on the Mi5. The shadows less harsh, and I think it's captured much more detail, and it just looks like a nicer image in my opinion. So now we get onto this one with a little bit of light from a monitor, and it's actually pretty tough to call. Both are extremely full of noise, but I would give the edge to the P9 actually. The colours seem to be much nicer, whereas with the Mi5 we've got a really horrible blue tint to it. So the P9 takes it for this one, I think. Yeah, you can see the image much clearer. So yeah, the P9 is definitely better on this one. And finally, a really low light selfie. So you can see what I said about this low light situation with the P9. It just uses the front facing flash, with which is the display, and it just fills you out much nicer. The Mi5 doesn't have that option, so the one on the left is pretty much what you're going to be left with. So I would say in low light selfies, the P9 is definitely the winner. So now we got onto this last test, and this is natural light, and we're going to do some focusing. So we're doing a focus close up and far away. You can see the Mi5 is coping really well. It's really fast. It's not what I'd call the smoothest focus pull, but I still think it looks really nice. It's really quick though. It's not the quickest I've ever tested, but it is really, really quick. So now we get onto the P9, and we're doing the same test here, and you can see it pulls focus much nicer and much cleaner and much smoother. It just takes much longer than the Mi5, and sometimes it doesn't actually grab focus at all. So in terms of speed and accuracy, the Mi5 seems to be better, but I think the P9 pulls focus much smoother. So I guess depending on what you want from a phone, whether you want it to be smooth or quick, that'd tell you which one would be best for you. Right guys, so that is pretty much it for this comparison. So which one is better? Well, the Huawei took the first round in the app department because it's got a much cleaner and much easier to use app. This one though was tougher to call. I think both are really strong cameras actually. The P9 seems to be much better at photos than the Mi5. It just captures much sharper and much nicer looking photos. The front facing camera is a bit tougher to call. Sometimes the Mi5 produces better ones and sometimes the P9 produces better ones. It's really, really tough to call. The rear camera, I would give the edge to the P9 though. It produces much cleaner images, much sharper, much more detail. Even though the Mi5 is still fantastic, I think the P9 does edge it in that department. The audio, as well, as you can probably tell from this, the P9 is much stronger in the audio department, and that just takes a clean sweep in audio, both front facing and rear facing. It's much better on the P9. So which one's better overall? I would say that in video mode, the Xiaomi is much quicker at focusing than the P9, and it actually produces quite nice video as well. The P9's video is a little bit hit and miss, but the Mi5's is much nicer. So depending on what you want from a camera, I guess that'd give you a winner. I would pick the P9 as the winner because I shoot more photos than I do video, but I guess that is up to you. So yeah, let me know down in the comments which you thought won this. I think I would give the slight edge to the P9 for me. The Mi5 is still fantastic, but me personally, I would pick the P9 just for its photography. It's just much nicer in that regard. Right guys, so that is pretty much it. If you want to see more comparisons between these two phones, then definitely hit that subscribe button because more are coming very soon. So thanks for watching guys, and I will see you all on the very next one.